Hey.
Hey, here we are.
Yeah.
Bonus episode.
Bonus might be too cheery of a word for it.
Yeah, more like emergency episode.
Yeah. We're just here to reiterate some points, and the first one is very obvious, is that Black Lives Matter.
Yes, they do. Black Lives Matter. That's kind of what we're here to talk about, is the recent eruption of police violence across the country now.
Yeah.
Originally centered in Minneapolis over the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. Obviously, that being just kind of the spark that sets the fire to anger over so much more than that, so many more police killings of black people.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been most affected by is that, you know, we already did this, and, you know, we've done this so many times, and it is really disheartening just to have to just go through this over and over again. And the fact is that, like, this has been happening for, you know, as long as the police have been around, this has been happening. Mm-hmm. It's just now we have phones that can capture it.
Yeah.
And even that isn't enough to convict these fuckers.
Well, yeah, to convict them of enough to, I mean, Chauvin, this guy that murdered George Floyd, is getting charged with, and this is assuming that even that the charges stick, because it's so hard to convict a cop in this country. It's third-degree murder and manslaughter. Yeah, I think is what they're putting him up on.
How do you accidentally kneel on someone for 8 minutes? Like, if you've seen, I have not seen the video because I don't have the stomach for it, but there's no way.
Like, yeah, at some point you have to be making the decision that this guy could die, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously the autopsy that they did in-house has something suspicious going on about it, because they say, oh, well, it's not necessarily strangulation, it's about...
Oh, the pre-consisting... And,
yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh. They did the same thing with, I think it was Freddie Gray.
Yeah, Freddie Gray riding in the back.
Being obese or something?
Something. Oh, you're thinking Eric Garner, maybe?
I think it was Eric Garner, sorry. Which as a fat person just made me so mad. Yeah. You know, it's just
I saw
ridiculous.
A tweet that put it pretty well, which was, Jesus Christ died from getting nailed to a cross and related health circumstances.
Yeah, and high blood pressure or something like that. I saw that too. No, it's insane. It's insane, the loops and hoops that these people will go through to make themselves, to absolve themselves of these murders, because that's what they are. Like, even if someone did a crime, you can't just kill them. That's not how justice works.
Yep. And it's not like, it's not just this case, it's so many other cases.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that surprisingly, you know, at least liberal white America and maybe some even conservative voices kind of realized how outrageous this
particular instance was.
Yeah. So I don't know if we have to elaborate too much on how awful that was.
I think we can all agree that was really bad. I do want to go ahead and put it out there. We are both. I mean, we're half not white, but we're pretty white. I look extremely white.
Yeah, we can basically pass.
Yeah. So yeah, we are not experts on this. We're definitely not black. So definitely listen to black voices on this. Uplift those. It feels weird not to say anything. There's a term called white silence, and I don't want to be a part of that. I think there's this fear of speaking out, of using your platform to talk about these issues, and I think it's bullshit. And
is that just like white people saying, like, oh, it's not my problem, or like, I shouldn't say anything, it's not, people don't want to hear from me, or what?
So it's a few things. I think some people don't feel qualified to speak on it, and like, I get that, and I've definitely felt that way. And that's why I'm putting this caveat up here, is like, hey, I'm not the expert.
Right,
which is, again, the premise of this podcast is I'm not the expert. But I think a lot of people don't do it because it's not, I don't know. I think it's more comfortable for them not to. I've noticed it a lot with like brands that are otherwise very vocal about like social justice, feminism, stuff like that. And they're not speaking up on this. They think it's too controversial. They think, as soon as you say something that kind of shows you as anti-cop, you're going to lose, like, people are losing followers and shit like that over this.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it's a dangerous sentiment to have in this country.
Fair enough, yeah. We might lose a few of you guys by the end of this, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We still love you, and we welcome you back when you want to come
Hear
back.
us out, you know?
But I think, I think that white people should definitely, like you said, speak out and be allies on this. Some of the weirder criticisms I see come from people who are saying like, oh, look, these people are doing this looting and they're, look at these white people involved in this. And there are outside agitators and stuff coming in to our cities and doing this. Like,
yeah,
that's just trying to keep you from solidarity with people who need your support, like it's not your fight, stay out, This is just about black people, which while that is the cause, while that is the cause that should be at the heart of it, I think everyone should, stick with people who are oppressed.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been a take that I've seen. I've seen advice to people who are going to protest, like, hey, if you are going and you're white, don't start any violence because the black people will get blamed for it. I think that's true.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You are less likely to be, I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures of like the MAGA guys and stuff, when they are like all up on a cop with like, and they have an AR-15 on their back or something.
Oh, and yeah.
It's like, yeah, if this was a black guy, he would have been killed. Like,
oh, absolutely.
You don't want to provoke stuff because you might get out of it unscathed and somebody else might not,
Exactly.
But one of the big things we wanted to talk about, right, with all this is the cops, because while there is rioting going on, I think it's in a lot of places it seems to have crossed over into like a police riot.
Yes. So the question of the day is, why are cops bad?
Yeah, why are cops bad? I think we're both in agreement that in some respects cops are bad, at least, to some degree.
Yeah, we all know murder's bad, guys. We figured that out.
And you might, as a listener, you might be all the way to the side of, well, some bad apples, or you might be fully anti-cop. We don't know, but we're going to talk about it and hopefully drag you around to one of those sides.
Let's talk about it.
Why are cops bad? Cops can use force justifiably against people. So they kind of have a James Bond style license to kill, for one thing. They murder folks.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm bothered by is the term even police brutality, because it's more than brutality. These are straight up murders, a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, police brutality would be if they roughed somebody up real bad while they were arresting them, which also happens.
Yeah, and that's also bad, don't get me wrong, but it seems like a way of kind of putting it more gently. And I saw this zine on Instagram from Sarah Mirk. It's M-I-R-K, Sarah with an H. And it was on passive voice in terms of reporting on police violence. And a lot of times you'll hear reports like, let me find it. Man died during arrest. And it's like, I mean, somebody killed him. He didn't just like drop dead on his own accord.
Heart attack, yeah.
Yeah, and the idea of saying like they were involved in use of force incidents instead of saying like, yeah, they fucking killed somebody.
Yeah, that's like the term which the media did not invent. Police forces invented and fed to the media, and the media keeps using it because they're little toadies of the police. But officer-involved shooting.
Yes, that's a big one.
Officer-involved, like he watched the shooting happen. He encouraged one of the parties to
put
shoot
up a
the other
camp
party.
chair.
Like, yeah, what did he do? How was he involved?
How was he involved?
Did he sell tickets? Like, no, officer.
Yeah, no, there's, and that language matters. Like it definitely, like you said, I'm sure a lot of these come from statements that the police department makes themselves to make themselves seem like they're the good guys.
It's PR, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, murders. That's why cops are bad.
You also have really bad stats in terms of what they do off the job, in terms of domestic violence numbers.
It's nuts, 40%. And that's just that we know about.
40% of cops' families have reported domestic violence, yeah. And that's, like you said, reported.
Yeah, and we all know, rape is a really underreported stat. I would imagine domestic violence is similar. It's really hard to come forward, often because there's a lot of like psychological attachment to your abuser, because abusers can be nice and then they're not nice. It's really hard to get that going, basically.
Yeah, and also concerns for personal safety.
Yeah, fear, for sure.
In the most recent case with George Floyd's murderer, Derek Chauvin, his wife filed for divorce the very first day he was in police custody. There's probably a reason she didn't do that beforehand.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet there is.
Maybe those two are completely unrelated, but maybe not.
Seems unlikely.
Another reason cops are bad is they're upholding America's carceral state. We are, a prison nation. We've got more people in prison than anywhere else, I think.
Including China, right?
I think so.
And China's a way bigger country, so, that's not great.
Yeah, we say, North Korea, they'll throw you in jail for anything, you'll go to the gulag, or we're the ones.
Same here.
We're the ones doing that, massive slave labor camps.
Yeah, we have 2.5 million people incarcerated, something like that.
Yeah, probably more.
Probably more. I actually don't know. But yeah, no, it's definitely a form of slavery because these prisoners are being forced to, make license plates and do all this backbreaking labor. For most states, it's for free. Some of them they get paid $1 or something obscenely low.
And you're right that it's literal slavery. The 13th Amendment outlaws slavery, except for specifically people convicted of crimes.
Yeah.
it's in the Constitution as legal slavery.
Yeah. And honestly, it's what is the goal with that? I think you would have people saying well, these people deserve it. They lost their chance at freedom. And I'm you can't take away somebody's freedom like that. I don't think that's okay to do. And I think that it just leads to more crime and more the people it leads to a completely disenchanted segment of the population that has no other choice but to go back into crime. Because even if you get out, you can't vote, you can't get most jobs. You are now stuck in this subcaste of society.
Yeah,
there's no opportunity to better yourself.
It's intentionally creating Marx's lumpen proletariat thing. It's forcing people into this underclass or something. This criminal.
Yeah, and it's what are they supposed to do? And you can't just I think for me, my goal will be okay, yeah, if someone did a crime, sure, we can try to get them to not do more crime. That is what I would want to do. But by forcing them into slave labor, surely at the end of this experience, they're going to be bitter as fuck and understandably so.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to be part of society because it has not turned out well for them.
Yeah. And, I guess cops don't technically have control over what prisons are like and stuff. All that is Department of Corrections things. They don't have control over that necessarily, but they sign up to get people to lock up and put away in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. This whole conversation is a big systemic issue. We could get into bail reform. We could get into incarceration as a whole. We could get into the justice system and how what is it only 1 out of 3 rapes get convicted or something like that. It's bad. I don't know the stat for it, but it's bad.
Terrible.
Cops will literally talk people out of pressing charges because they're it's not going to work unless you have this evidence, basically.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's real bad. So yeah, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But right now, let's go back to cops.
But yeah, cops, they're upholding all that. That's bad. Are all cops bad? Do you think all cops are bad?
I don't know. I mean, I'm scared of all cops. I will say that. I'm always.
I don't know. I don't think that all cops are bad people.
Yeah, I bet there are personally some nice cops, but yeah. I think here's the thing: is you don't have to be a cop. You could have just not. You chose it.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, it doesn't require a bad person to do a bad thing. They could be good, but I think that if you made a choice to be a cop, I don't think it's a good choice to make. I don't think people should choose to do that.
That reminds me, kind of going back to some earlier points about, I guess, white allies and stuff. I think a lot of people will jump to saying, I'm not racist. And I think we should be more specific and say I am anti-racist. So that's something I've been seeing online a lot. People have this notion of I'm not racist means I don't I don't think that brown people are bad. And it's congratulations. But you can still do racist shit.
Yeah.
You can still uphold racism in so many ways. So we have to be better. And that's what a lot of these people will defend themselves with. That fucking horrible woman that called the cops on that guy in Central Park.
Oh, man, yeah.
May she burn in hell for eternity. Yeah. Fucking, I think it was Amy. No, I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cooper was her last name. She contends that she's not racist. I'm like, well, you did a racist thing. I don't
Yeah.
care if like you don't identify as racist. It doesn't matter.
I don't have any Nazi tattoos. Like,
Yeah, like that's a low fucking bar. Like you have to hold yourself to a standard where you don't do racist things. And if you do, you apologize, you make up for it, you do what you can to fix it. It's not like a label. It's not like like an identity or like a, I don't know how to describe it. It's not an intrinsic thing.
Yeah.
Or a philosophy. Yeah. It's something you do and you perform every day.
Right. Yeah. I like that distinction because I think it is easy to say, yeah, I'm not personally a bigot, you know.
Yeah. I don't go around saying these people are better than these people. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I don't believe, okay, sure, you don't believe that.
You don't
nice.
believe it. But what do you do? How do you act that out?
Yeah. So I think anti-racist is very useful to distinguish between that. And it kind of ties into people when they say, well, what about, you know, black police officers or people of color who are cops or you know, we need more women cops.
Queer.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a black woman police chief here in Dallas.
Yeah. I don't know. I like good, kind of. I mean, it can kind of like
probably better.
It can make things better, I think, in the short term, right? Like make departments more aware.
Yeah, if they're actually from their community and they're actually serving neighborhoods where they grew up in, and like I've heard that community policing is a lot better than regular policing. But also at the end of the day, they're still upholding laws that are bullshit. Like,
yeah, and I mean that's not. Yeah, I think a lot of people get tangled up because it's like it's not their fault. The laws, they didn't make the laws. They're enforcing them, right?
But they signed up to do it.
But you do sign up to it, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't wake up in the body of a cop one day like, oh, I must police.
There's a song from the 60s or maybe the 70s or something by a guy named Donovan, and it's called Universal Soldier.
Does he have just one name like Cher?
Yeah. I don't know if he has that's a stage name. And it's just talking about, you know, soldiers basically. It's, you know, the universal soldier, and he describes him as being from all these different places, fighting for all these different things. But without him, what war would actually happen? Nothing. You know, at the end of the day, people sign up to be a soldier, you know, through various means, and maybe they made the decision for the right reasons, maybe they didn't. But if nobody signed up to be a soldier, or people refused to get drafted or whatever, you know, there wouldn't be these wars. Same kind of with policing. Man.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a common argument with both police and with the military is that like, oh, it's a way to get a good job. And it's like, hey, what if you're guaranteed a good job regardless? Like, what if you weren't? You know, a lot of people when they sign up for the military, it's because they want to have healthcare. They want to go to school. Yeah. Like, that's bad. We shouldn't be forcing people into career tracks that they're not interested in because they can't afford basic human rights.
It's not just that. I mean, career tracks they're not interested in would be
dying.
One thing. Yeah, that'd be one thing if it's just like, damn, I had to become an accountant to get healthcare. But like, you know, they're going over there and shelling people and getting shelled. Yeah.
Yeah. That's bad. I don't think that's good.
And I think I think with the police, you know, there are sympathetic cases and situations where you're like, okay, well, this person, maybe they did these things for the right reasons. Maybe they aren't racist or anything.
Yeah, but I will applaud the police chief of Houston who marched with the protesters. I think that was cool.
Yeah, that is a good action given the circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's like, I think people have too much obsession with law and order. And maybe not so much our listeners, but definitely mainstream America saying, you know, you can't break laws. I'm like, oh, why?
What if the laws are bad? Yeah,
exactly. Laws can be bad, guys. It was okay to like. I mean, we used to not have interracial marriage, so like, yeah, you should break those laws.
Yeah, and you know, you shouldn't break the laws all the time. Sure, I mean, I generally like can agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not like murdering people.
Don't break most laws, you know.
Yeah, there's some basics that are good. Let's not murder. That sounds great. I guess my point is that, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the unrest that this movement has sparked. And if you look back at even the founding of this country, which was like, hey, let's not pay our taxes and start some riots.
Let's destroy
property.
$1 million worth of tea. You know, in today's money, which is that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. But like even in like what is it? Oh God, I'm gonna look like a dumbass. In the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, where they're like, when a government isn't doing their job, the people have a right to be like, fuck you, let's make our own. That is a declaration.
That is, yeah. The Declaration
Yes,
says
it
it
is.
basically lays
You
out
can
that
keep
argument.
that in. I'm okay with being a dumbass. But yeah, I had to memorize part of that for 8th grade, not to brag. But yeah, like it's enshrined in our history and in more places than that too. Stonewall, like queer people, shut the fuck up about complaining about being anti-cop, because Stonewall was like, we decided, like, a black trans woman threw a brick and like it was a fucking fight for 5 days.
Yeah.
And it started because police came and busted up a gay bar. So like, get in line.
Sorry, no. My turn to be an idiot. Was
No.
that like a bar called Stonewall, or like
It was the Stonewall
place?
Inn, and it was like a known, like it was a open secret kind of gay club thing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And that worked. I mean, it didn't like immediately work. It's not like, hey, gay marriage is here now.
What did it do though? Like, how did it work?
It inspired a lot of, basically inspired a lot of the gay movement as a whole. So lots of organizations were founded after that. Gay Liberation Front, GLAAD, PFLAG. A lot of these groups spun off of it. Basically all the activism in the 70s was very much inspired by that. And they started demanding rights, which is, you can draw a direct line to like what we have today.
So like inspired, it kicked things off.
Yeah, it made people realize, like, this isn't okay, guys. Like, we can't, beat people up for being gay.
Yeah. And I think it's important that it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't overnight gay marriage or something, right? It was,
No.
while it did kick off these organizations, it's not a pure, like, easy, direct line of progress. There's
yeah, exactly.
setbacks and everything, but it gets people going.
It brings attention to your movement, and it shows people how many of you there are and how fucking mad you are about it. And I think that's valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Other examples include like the early labor movement, when they were first starting unions and everything. There were horribly violent confrontations between them and strikebreakers, but them and police and National Guard.
Wait, where was this?
Mostly out in the West. You have the Chicago Haymarket riot. In Haymarket Square, they had a big demonstration. Labor unions were out there demonstrating for the 8-hour workday. And
when was this?
this was in 1886. But no, the Haymarket Fair, like somebody ends up throwing a bomb at the police. Nobody really knows, but they blame the anarchists and stuff. It was
That's a big trend, huh?
yeah. So it was initially people started celebrating International Workers' Day on May 1st to kind of commemorate this. Mm-hmm. And in the United States, we were like, you can't commemorate that because, cops died. So that's why we have Labor Day, not on May 1st.
Okay.
But there's other ones where basically there's something called the Ludlow Massacre where they were on strike. This is more recent than that. This was in 1914.
Oh, damn.
In the Ludlow Massacre, you had like coal miners on strike in Colorado. And they were like still living in the company towns or whatever. And the company came in and burned it all down, burned their camp.
Now, did the company do it, or did they get cops to do it for them?
They, I think, had the company or strikebreakers for them doing that.
Okay.
But then the strikebreakers, when they fought back, the Colorado called out the National Guard to fight them. And the union strikers and everybody, they didn't fucking back down. They fought back against them. They were fighting soldiers and shit doing that.
Dang.
It was like a mini war out there.
Yeah. And definitely in future episodes, we'll be covering like the U.S. labor movement and some of these movements in more detail. But we just wanted to give some context that, like, I think a big reaction point to this is like, why can't these protests just be nonviolent? And it's because, like, this stuff works.
It does in a way, yeah. Like rioting and violent protests, they show people their power, their real raw power in numbers.
Yeah. And a striking headline I saw was, I think it was from a cop or something, like a police chief that was just like, there's more of them than there are of us. And I was
we're
like,
outnumbered 4-1. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Show them they're outnumbered. The bad thing is what can happen after, because this can ultimately, riots can provoke either reaction or reform.
I think that's my big concern, is that people are going to come out of this like, see, this is bad.
No, the right wing and more wishy-washy liberals in the middle will, and centrists, of course, everybody who's a law and order type will come out and they will say, this is why we need, they might even be nice about it and say police reforms, but they're trying to give money to the cops, or they're trying to, the meaner ones of them will say, we need to crack down on this lawlessness and whatever. They will try to do that,
So
guaranteed.
Before we get into that, let's get into, I think a lot of people are like, okay, is looting okay? Basically, doesn't that affect small businesses? I've seen a lot of coverage on even black-owned businesses. In my neighborhood, a Muslim immigrant's liquor store got looted. And I know that guy, he's a nice guy, and I feel bad for him. But what do we say about that, I guess?
Ideal world, we don't target small businesses, black-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses.
Because I laughed my fucking ass off when Target got burned. I was like, you deserve it. You were being a piece of shit. You were supporting the police department in town. You weren't selling milk to the protesters so they could wash their fucking eyes out. Which, by the way, milk doesn't work. Try baking soda and water.
Oh, there you go.
But still, it's fucked up. That was understandable.
Yeah. Okay. So ideally, we would, if we're running a very organized, disciplined riot.
You do a Google.
Yeah. You make sure that, check the finances of every place that you're vandalizing and make sure that they deserve it.
But realistically, that's not going to happen because a riot is a riot.
Realistically, it's a riot. It's not an organized, disciplined situation. It's an expression of anger, an imperfect one, not an ideal one. I think it was the quote going around from Martin Luther King is, it's the cry of the unheard. Yeah.
And I think, again, to go back to our caveat, we are not black. We do not know the pain that these people have gone through.
Correct.
It is unimaginable to have your brothers and sisters and children and everyone in your life affected by this and, killed by this and living your whole life in fear.
Getting murdered. Yeah. Getting murdered.
Living
in the fear of getting murdered. Having to raise your kids and tell them, do these things so that you don't get murdered, or so that you might not have a better chance not to get murdered.
And even then, doesn't matter. You could have Skittles in your pocket and someone thinks you look suspicious.
Even then, you could be sleeping.
Yeah, you could be in your own fucking house.
Yeah, sleeping.
Yeah.
There's I think when you put that up against, when you put all the emotion of, this is constantly happening to you in a society that isn't doing anything about it.
Yeah, we know. We did all this before.
Yeah, we should not blame people when they're in that situation of
at that
lashing
point,
out.
It's like a war mentality at that point. Understandably so. They've been fucking ravaged by this.
And when you come out to demonstrate, and the cops come out to keep order, what they're actually coming out there to do is to protect, make sure that you don't kill anyone or destroy anything.
Mm-hmm.
You want to thwart their goals otherwise you want to get put up on charges for killing someone, especially a cop, or just die right there for trying to. The other big middle finger you can give them is to bust up stuff around you.
Yeah.
Now that said, you say, okay, well, yeah, we shouldn't target small businesses or black-owned businesses, or there should be exceptions. I definitely think ideally there should be, but the protection that they have is that they are covered by insurance. So they're not going to, in most cases, they probably haven't been put out in the street by this,
Yeah. I think my question to people who bring that up is, what's more important, people's property or the systematic murder and oppression of black people? Ask yourself that.
And I think it's telling.
Mm-hmm. Are you equally mad about the other stuff? Yeah. At the very least.
You see the news coverage and everything on George Floyd's murder, and everyone's appalled. Everyone's nowhere near as panicked as they are now.
Yeah.
You don't see.
Let me be clear. I was freaked out by it. Honestly, my neighborhood got fucking trashed. It was a little bit scary. But at the end of the day, I'm still fucking mad about black people getting murdered more than I am about windows being busted. It's an inconvenience to me, but whatever. I'll get over it.
Yeah. Property is on nowhere, not even on the same scale.
It's not as important as human life.
Yeah. And that's where we differ. That's where, when, you might get some liberals to say that's sort of the same thing, but socialists and communists differ from the mainstream of American politics when we say that, human life in any condition should be valued above property. Yeah. When we were talking about incarceration and stuff, so many people are in there for property crimes or drug
Yeah.
crimes or something.
Oh,
And
gosh,
that's,
so many drug crimes.
and that's valuing property and stuff above those people's lives. Like, that should change.
Yeah. So I think a big point or question is, I think a lot of people are like, well, what's your idea? So let's put on our fake president hats.
All right.
So how would we fix this I can be president, you can be my chief of staff. What do you think about that?
Okay, I'm Leo.
You get to be Leo McGarry. I get to be Bartlett, but a queer Latinx genderqueer person.
Socialist Bartlett.
Yeah. So not at all Bartlett. Our fake presidency. All right. Here's what we don't do. I think a common response to this is, let's give more money to cops.
Yeah. You say, let's give more money to cops. Chief of staff comes in. No, that's fucking bullshit. Don't do that.
Yeah. So a lot of people, we saw this happen after, the riots and stuff in 2014, after
In
Ferguson and Baltimore was, okay, let's get them more body cams. Let's get them more trainings. Here's the problem with that. One is that doesn't fix everything, even if they do that. Another one is a lot of time the way funding models work is police aren't really held accountable for how they spend money, like at all. They can buy whatever the fuck they want, and they can buy it real cheap. And you saw that happen after this. You saw, in response to the protests in 2014-15, cops militarized the fuck up. They bought tanks, they bought body armor, they bought crazy guns, they bought all kinds of shit.
Yeah. And when you mention training, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about one of the people that is frequently brought out to train police officers and even the FBI and stuff is some sort of a expert named Dave Grossman.
Ew.
Who
is he Grossman?
Was maybe he's a former cop or something. Yeah. Oh, I wrote a book called On Killing.
Gosh.
But he's all about teaching cops, and they also have him teach military and stuff how to be okay with killing.
Ooh, listeners, you can't see my face, but it is concerned.
Says they shouldn't go out looking for people to kill because those who need killing, the quote, gangbangers, terrorists, and mass murderers, will come to them.
Hachi machi.
All they need to do is be ready.
So that's the mentality they're teaching, is be ready to kill?
Yeah. It says, are you prepared to kill somebody? He asks me and the small group of armed citizens who paid $90 or more to see him. This is an example of a private thing he's running. But then he says, quote, if you cannot answer that question, you should not be carrying a gun.
Ooh, wow.
But that would be the sort of training that they would fund with,
yeah.
They don't, because you're not tying any specific, you have to spend it on this. You're not even really tying it to you have to spend it on training. Like you said, they're just
giving the
they
money.
Look like the Avengers out there.
Oh, yeah. It's great. We got some fucking Iron Man cops out there. I've seen a lot of tweets about this where, like, cops are, looking like they're fucking Voltron. And then, doctors don't even have masks.
Yeah, they're wearing trash bags.
Yeah. It's nuts.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about what not to do, which is give more money to cops. So I think a lot of people's question is, okay, then what? Like, how can we not have cops?
Well, I don't know. How do you not have cops in general?
Well, I think that's the ultimate dream, is to not have cops. So maybe we take a step back. What do you do? How do you help? And I think for me, that's restorative justice.
What do you mean by that?
So that encompasses a lot of things, which we've kind of touched on earlier, which is bail reform and prison reform and investing more into education and mental health. Honestly, I think a lot of issues would be solved by like having an adequate social safety net so people don't have to do crime to like have money and have a good living and or be forced into being a cop or in the military. I think that'd be great if we had healthcare and housing as a human right. Just an idea.
Yeah. There would a lot of the property crimes would go away. Drug offenses should be not things.
Yes.
Should be done away with, and addiction problems should be treated in the health health sphere rather than in the criminal sphere.
Yeah. Definitely like marijuana reform for sure. That's a really low, easy hanging fruit that we just won't fucking do.
I think in terms of where there is incarceration, it should be done more of how they do it in, is it Norway or Finland or some sort of Scandinavian place where it's basically like a dorm or something that people stay in. And the goal is not, hey, you did this bad thing, we're locking you up for this many years to punish you.
It's not punitive.
Yeah, not punitive. You're trying to, when you do lock someone away, you're saying, this person cannot be safely in society. Like, or they'll kill somebody, or they'll assault somebody, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You're keeping them away from society, hoping to and trying to rehabilitate them so that they can one day be in society like a normal person, which is strange for a lot of people. Like, if you're sitting there saying, but they killed somebody, but they murdered somebody, but they, raped somebody, those are all terrible things. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to kind of step back and say, but we want to try to fix them. I don't know. That's hard for people.
No, I agree. I think people jump to those extremes, first of all, which I don't think is fair, because there's a ton of people in prison who aren't murderers and rapists. A lot of people. I would say most people. Drug offenses, like you said, property offenses, all kinds of stuff. So why don't we take care of them first if you're so concerned about murderers, which I get. And then once we have a good handle on that, we can turn to that, and this is going to sound petty and stupid. We're rewatching Avatar, like a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Because it's on Netflix. And this is kind of a point they make in the third season. They, the whole premise of the show has been, the main character, Aang, has to train up and master the elements so he can fight the big bad, the Fire Lord. And he is he was raised as a monk, so he's very nonviolent. And it's really interesting because, it is a kid's show. And so even in all the fight scenes, no one dies. They just they
get knocked out. Yeah.
Yeah. You
defeated.
freeze someone to a wall so they can't move, whatever. You knock them off, basically. A lot of KOs. But, they're getting to the point, spoilers for Avatar, but they're getting into the point where, they had this big storyline about someone in their group wanted to seek revenge because someone, stole their mother away or whatever. And she ended up not killing him. And he was like, I think you made the right choice. And then someone else was like, okay, are you going to kill the Fire Lord? And it's this guy was leader of basically the Nazis, took over the world, real piece of shit.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, big spoiler, he doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
So... yeah, it really makes you come to those individual questions of at the end of the day, are you willing to do that to another human being, even if they suck?
Yeah, it's rough, man. Because
it's a hard question, and I think people love to make it personal. Be like, okay, your wife just got raped. What are you gonna do? And it's
right.
You can't. That's why you don't serve on the jury whenever your wife gets raped.
Yeah,
you can't be impartial about it.
Right. Yeah, and that's why it's not up to victims to sentence people because that's you're right,
bad.
In the moment, no one can blame you for wanting somebody to be executed for that. Sure.
Well, of course. It's understandable.
But yeah, no, I think that's something we could do to fix it is transition to a more restorative justice thing. One kind of more small scale, not solution, I think, but something that would make policing as it stands today less brutal
less
and
bad.
Racist is if cops had to live where they police.
Yeah.
So a lot of cops in cities and stuff don't live in the cities proper where they are patrolling.
Are they out in the suburbs or something or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they should have to. I mean,
yeah.
That way they're not viewing themselves subconsciously maybe, but still they're not occupying. They're not an occupying force.
They know their neighbors. They're not going to fucking murder their neighbor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that called community policing? Is that what that is?
That may be involved in it. We're not experts. We don't know.
We're not good at this.
But I think that would be good. I don't think body cams really help. So many of them are switched off, most of the time. Even when they do have them, they're
there's lots of mysterious malfunctions.
Right. Yeah. That can happen. So I think those would help. I like the bail reform movement in terms of what it's doing now on the ground. It's really taking off because so many people are donating to the Freedom Fund, is it called? The
Minnesota Freedom Fund.
Yeah, and they have those around too. They have them in Philly and in
I'm going to look up a Dallas one today and switch my donation drive over to that. Yeah,
I think that's great. We should continue to fund those to the maximum, keep those flush so that, because that's effectively a community way of nullifying temporarily the practice of cash bail.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. For people who don't know, bail is whenever... Explain bail.
Bail is to get out of jail before your trial. The police arrest you. They say, you robbed this bank. And you're like, I want to talk to my lawyer. You get locked up.
So that's the difference between jail and prison, because I did not know that for a long time.
The same, yeah. Jail is where they hold you before the trial. And they're like, you can pay bail you pay them a certain amount of money and you can go home. And then if you just, book it to Mexico or to
wherever.
Yeah, Tibet. They keep that money, so that sucks for you. So that's why you don't skip out. It's a way to compel you to come back to court, but allow you to stay in your house in that meantime.
Which here's the thing, on some level makes sense. You don't want a murderer on the streets, but most of the people held on bail are nonviolent offenders.
Yeah, you got people in bail. They had a warrant or something. They got picked up. They're in there. The bail is $250, but they're too poor. Nobody that they don't know anybody who could put that up for them, and so they're stuck.
Yeah,
and that's unfair. Like anything that's a fine. Okay, a fine just means it's legal for you to do if you're rich enough. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're rich enough, Jeff Bezos could run every single stoplight in the country and be fine.
Yeah. He'd get his license revoked and then he'd get another ticket for driving without a license and he'd be fine.
Yeah. He could do infinite crime.
Yeah. It is legal for you to
what
do
if
you are rich enough. That's what a fine means. So if you're in favor of fines, you got to understand that you're just saying we should legalize this for rich people and nobody else.
Yeah, it's pretty shitty.
Right, so think about that if you.
And we've seen the instances where this is clearly used as a money raising tool. I was watching a movie yesterday where it was set in the 70s and New York was going bankrupt, so they decided to crack down on traffic laws and shit. And that's hard. A lot of people weren't used to that. They're like, oh, I thought I could park here and shit.
Yeah, it's just unfair. It's unfair that the rich can walk free from doing whatever. And honestly, everybody should get to do that because, they're the only ones is what's unfair about it. I don't mean to say that they should have to stay in jail.
Exactly. And if, I think these are the types of people who are also concerned with fairness in terms of I worked for this. This is my version of fairness where you shouldn't be able to do something just because you're rich. Okay. So some concrete actions you can take, look up bail funds in your area. For those of you who don't know, I am an illustrator, and so I'm doing art commissions. You can donate to a bail fund and send me an email with a screenshot, and I will draw you something. You can find me on Instagram if you want to know more about that. A lot of other artists are doing this too. So
we can put it in the show notes too.
Yeah,
and get people's attention to that. I think another thing to do would be to, it's just posting, but retweet and stuff, share. Anything you come across, amplify Black voices in this
exactly crisis. We are not the experts here.
No.
we are
not
just
even on the
putting
ground
this out
really.
there. No, we're not.
Find recordings like the awful one of the everyone should see. Every American should see the violence that's going on. That should be. We no longer have the evening news broadcasts of everybody sees the horrific events happening. It's all online. You got to share that stuff.
Well, okay, some caveats on that. Don't share protesters' faces. It's very dangerous for them.
True, yeah.
They can get fired. They can get murdered. All kinds of stuff. I would also not share videos of Black people being beat up or murdered because that's very traumatic for Black people to have to see all over their timelines.
That's true.
So be judicious about it. Don't just be sharing everything. I don't know. Be smart.
That's a very good point. Yeah, do that.
But you can talk about it and amplify Black voices for sure. They are leading the way on this, but they shouldn't be doing it alone.
And this can't die down. If we have a few days of unrest and eventually everything fades out and everything, guess what? Just like last time when we had Baltimore or Ferguson, we're going to be in the same situation 7 years from now. 5 years from now.
Stay mad.
The people in power have to be held accountable longer than just this. If we fade out after this, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly. I think a lot of us, including myself, are guilty of that. Of okay, I'll donate, I'll share stuff, and then go back to my normal life in a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And same. Yeah, same. I'm in that same boat. It's the hot thing right now, so we're talking about it. But later, well, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and that's something I want to be aware of on this podcast. I have specifically started planning for future episodes where we do talk about race and gender and stuff like that, because I think a lot of left spaces are pretty white, and are very much class before identity, and I think that's fair in some ways. Class is pretty important, but I want to be a welcoming space for minority voices. So hold us accountable too. We're doing our best.
Yeah. will be intersectional here, because the same oppression that oppressed groups face is the same oppression that the working class faces. So it's, we shouldn't be.
It is all important.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that kind of gives us a good start to our answer. Why cops are bad. There's a lot more we could go into detail on it, but we wanted this to be kind of just a short kind of update on what's going on.
Yeah. Give you some things to think about, kind of talk about some things that have been going through our minds. But
yeah, it's been a lot. I want another point to make. I think I've seen this kind of floating around, is that I think it's natural to have a lot of feelings about this and to be anxious and depressed and stuff like that. If you're a white person, try to not dump that on black people. They got enough going on right now. So, talk to your other white friends about it, not publicly. Make your own space for that if you need to. Call your therapist if you have one. I think that's fine. Take care of yourselves, but also do the work. You can't just be scared and do nothing. You gotta do something.
Yeah.
And if you have a mental illness or, a valid reason to not go out right now is COVID, do something else. Make some calls, donate, share. There's different degrees that you can do.
For sure, yeah. At the very least, post. At the very least, post.
That's the least you can do.
Post, share, be judicious about it, but, draw attention to it. Try to get people to...
don't let it die down.
To try to get people to help with the bail funds. Try to get people to get pissed about this, because people should be pissed. Like you said, a lot of other emotions, sure, I agree. But we should have a righteous anger about what's happening. Communists and socialists should be fucking pissed about the brutality the police are inflicting on people who are demonstrating.
For sure.
Okay, I think we put a bow on it then.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. This is kind of an ad hoc episode, but as usual, you can find us on social media. We are at Teach Communism on Twitter, at Teach Me Communism on Instagram, teachmecommunism@gmail.com. If you want to send us a question, if you want to send us more resources for this topic, like we said, we are not experts, so please feel free to do that. Send in questions for future episodes. We love that. We also love when you rate and review us on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, we love
I'm
that.
an old fart and keep wanting to say iTunes, but Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. R.I.P. iTunes.
R.I.P. iTunes. Thank you for listening. Thanks, Gray, for letting me process that with you. That was nice. I feel like I needed it.
Yeah, I needed it too. I've been all over this stuff lately. It's
a lot to take in.
Yeah.
I kind of just have to put my phone away sometimes, just be like, okay, I think that's tempting to do, just to shut it out if you're privileged enough to do that, but you do have to talk about it.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
until next time, catch us Thursday on the next episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session.
All right. Keep it sleazy.
Bye.
Bye.